Good morning, students. I continue to read this book, Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, The Hammer of Thor, and continue on with chapter 7. The heading of chapter 7 is Have you or anyone you love ever suffer from lindworms? We waded into combat like one happy family. Well, except for the fact that TJ grabbed my arm and whispered, "Keep an eye on her, will you? I don't want to get mauled from behind." So I brought up the rear with Alex Farrow. We moved inland, picking our way through the field of corpses, all of whom we would see later alive at dinner time. I could have taken some pretty funny photos, but camera photos were heavily discouraged on the field of combat. You know how it is. Somebody snaps a picture of you dead in an embarrassing pose. It makes a popular page on Instagram. Then you get teased about it for centuries. Halfborn and Mallory chopped us a path through a pack of brush. TJ shot Charlie Flanagan in the head. Charlie thinks it's hilarious to get shot in the head. Don't ask me why. We dodged a volley of fiery balls from the tar balls from the balcony catapults. We had a brief sword battle with Big Lou from floor 401. Great guy, but he always wants to die by decapitation. That's hard since Lou is almost 7 feet tall. He seeks out Halfborn Gunnarsson on the battlefield since Halfborn is one of the few warriors tall enough to oblige. Somehow, we made it to the edge of the woods without getting stomped by a lindworm. TJ, Mallory, and Halfborn fanned out in front and led us into a shadow of trees. I moved wirily through the underbrush, my shield up, my standard issue combat sword heavy on my left hand. The sword wasn't nearly as well balanced or as lethal as Jack, but it was a lot less talkative. Next to me, Alex strolled along, apparently unconcerned that she was empty-handed and the most brightly colored target in our group. After a while, the silence got to me. "I've seen you before," I told her. "Were you at the youth shelter on Winter Street?" She sniffed. "I hate that place." "Yeah, I lived on the streets for 2 years." She arched her eyebrows, which made her amber left eye look paler and colder. "You think that makes us friends now because you're homeless?" Everything about her pose says, "Get away from me. Hate me or whatever. I don't care as long as you leave me alone." But I was a contrary person. On the streets, plenty of homeless folks had acted belligerent towards me and pushed me away. They didn't trust anybody. Why should they? They just made me more determined to get to know them. The loner usually had the best stories. They were the most interesting and the savviest about staying alive. Sam must have had some reason for bringing this kid to Valhalla. I wasn't going to let Pharaoh off the hook just because she had startling eyes, an impressive sweater vest, and a tendency to hit people. "What did you mean earlier," I asked, "when you said, 'Call me she'?" My gender fluence and transgender says I'm a gender fluid and transgender, idiot. Look it up if you need to, but it's not my job to educate you. So, this Alex Farrow is a shift changer. She can change her gender back and forth, but right now she's a girl. That's not what I meant. Oh, please, I saw your mouth hanging open. Well, yeah, maybe for a second I was surprised, but I wasn't sure how to continue without sounding like even more of an idiot. The gender thing wasn't what surprised me. A huge percentage of the homeless teens I've met have been assigned to one gender at birth but identified as another, or they They felt like a whole boy-girl binary didn't apply to them. They ended up on the streets because, shocker, their families didn't accept them. Nothing says tough love like kicking your non homogenic kid to the curb so they can experience abuse, drugs, high suicide rates, and a constant physical danger. Thanks, Mom and Dad. What surprised me was the way I reacted to Alex, how fast my impressions of her had slingshot, and the kind of emotions that had stirred up. I wasn't sure I could put that into words without turning as red as Mallory King's hair. Well, what was I? I was saying, is when you are talking to the raven, like talking to the raven. You mentioned you were worried you've been messed up. What did you mean by that, Alex? Alex looked like I just offered her a huge wedge of Limburger cheese. Maybe I overreacted. I wasn't expecting to die today or get scooped up by some Valkyrie. That was Sam, by the way, and you know what? She's okay. Alex shook her head. I don't forgive her. I got here and found out, well, whatever. I'm dead. I'm immortal. I didn't want that to happen. So bango, I am here. I never aged and never changed. I thought that meant, her voice frayed. It doesn't really matter. I don't want to talk about it. I was pretty sure it did matter. I wanted to ask her about life back in Midgard, which is Earth. Why she had an outdoor atrium just like mine in her suite. All that pottery, why would she want to put the mark of Loki next to her initials on her work? I wondered if her arrival was just a coincidence, or whether it had something to do with the mark on Uncle Randolph's face in the photo and our sudden urgent need to find Thor's hammer. On the other hand, I suspected that if I tried to ask her about all that, she would turn into a mountain gorilla and rip off my face. On the other hand, I suspect that if I tried to ask her all that, she would turn into a mountain gorilla and tear off my face. I just read that. Happily, I was spared the fate when the limworm crash landed in front of us. The monster hurled out of the sky, flapping its ridiculous wings and roaring like a grizzly bear with a 100-watt amp. Trees cracked and splintered under its weight as if landed in our midst. Arr! Halfborn yelled, which was Old Norse for, holy crud, there's a dragon. Just before the limworm smacked him into the sky. Judging from the arc, Halfborn Gunnarsson is going to end up somewhere around floor 29, which would be a surprise to anyone relaxing on that balcony. TJ fired his rifle. Gun smoke blossomed harmlessly against the dragon's chest. Mallory shouted a curse in galactic and said, charge. The limworm ignored her and turned towards me. I should mention, limworms are very ugly. It's like if Freddy Krueger and a Walking Dead zombie had a child, that kind of ugly. Their faces were no flesh. Their face have no flesh or hide, just carapace of bone and exposed tendons, gleaming fangs, and dark and sunken eye sockets. When the monster opened its maw, I could see straight down its raw meat-colored throat. Alex crouched, her hands feebly for something at her belt. Oh, this is not good. A dragon is going to eat us. No kidding. My hand was so sweaty I could barely hold my sword. You go right, I'll go left. We'll flank it. No, I mean that isn't just any dragon. That's Grimwolf, one of the ancient worms. I stared up into the monster's dark eye sockets. He did seem bigger than most of the limworms I found, but I was usually too busy dying to ask a dragon its age or name. How do you know? I asked, and why would anybody call a dragon Grimwolf? The limworm hissed, filling the air with a scent like burning tires. Apparently, he was sensitive about his name. Mallory stabbed at the dragon's legs, screaming more angrily the longer the limworm ignored her. Are you two going to help? She called back to us. Or just stand there and chat? TJ attacked the monster with his bayonet. The point just bounced off the creature's ribs. Being a good soldier, TJ backed up and tried it again. Alex tugged some sort of cord from her belt loop, a dull steel wire no thicker than a kite string that simply wouldn't with simple wooden dowels on either end of the handles. Grimwolf is one of the dragons that live at the root of the world tree. He should have been here. He shouldn't be here. No one would be crazy enough to. Her face blanched. Her expression hardened as if turning to a limworm bone. He sent it for me. I know. He knows I'm here. Magnus says, what do you mean sent the dragon for you? Why do you think the dragon, this Grimwolf, was sent here just for you, Alex? Who? Yeah, by the way, who sent this dragon to you? What? She said. Distract him, she ordered. She leaped into the nearest tree and began to climb. Even without turning into a gorilla, she could definitely move like one. I took a shaky breath. Distract him. Sure, yeah, I can distract a dragon while it tries to eat me. The dragon snapped at Alex, biting off several tree branches. Alex moved fast, stampering higher into the trunk, but one or two more snaps and she'd be a limworm lunchable. Meanwhile, Mallory and TJ were still hacking away at the creature's legs and belly, but they were having no luck convincing the dragon to eat them. It's only a practice battle, I told myself. It's only practice. We're just here to learn and get experience, I told myself. Just charge in there, Magnus. Get yourself killed like a pro. That was the whole point of daily combat, to learn to fight any foe, to overcome our fears of death. Because on the day of Ragnarok, we need all the skill and courage we can muster. So why did I hesitate? First, I'm way better at healing than I am fighting. Oh, and running away, I'm really good at that. Also, it's hard to charge straight into your own demise, even if you know it wouldn't be permanent, especially if that demise involved large amounts of pain. The dragon snapped at Alex again, missing her rose high tops by an inch. As much as I hated dying, I hated even more seeing my comrades get killed. I screamed, "Frey!" and ran into the limworm. Just my luck, Grimwolf was happy to turn his attention to me. When it comes to Dragon Argo from Ancient Monsters, I've got the golden touch. Mallory stumbled back out of the way, chucking one of her knives at the dragon's head. TJ also retreated, yelling, "All yours, buddy." As far as encouraging words you might hear before excruciating death goes, those sucked pretty bad. I raised my shield and sword like the nice instructor had demonstrated in Viking 101.